Imagine Old Country Buffet, but good for you. They could walk around anywhere they wanted. Plug all this beautiful, amazing food. Unlimited food. Boy, that gets me excited. I could live in a place like that. Just keep eating whenever you want. God says, look, all of this is yours. All this food, it's good to eat, and I want you to freely eat of everything here. It's a beautiful home. It's got unlimited food, meaningful employment. Now, wait a minute. I don't know if I'm so excited about the idea of employment, but the reality is all of us want to have something to do, don't we? We all want to have something. Some people say that it's okay to have a job as long as you love it. If you love your job, you'll never feel like you're working. And I think that was the case for Adam and Eve. As God gave them instructions to take the garden and to care for it and to work the garden. Work is not a result of the fall. Adam and Eve worked before the fall. But it's just after the fall, it got really hard because the earth no longer cooperated. Before the fall, it was meaningful. They had a purpose to what they do. They woke up every morning excited. Hey, all right, we get to work the garden today. And the garden's not going to fight back. There's not going to be any weeds. We're not going to have to fertilize the soil. It's going to work with us. What an amazing thing. To have that excitement of another project that's going to be fun to do and easy to do every day. Meaningful employment. They had loving direction. Have you ever tried to play a game with no rules? One of the things that I noticed when I used to work with the junior hires, and this is particularly true with junior hires, is you have to have lots of rules. You have to be very clear about them. Whenever we would play a game with the youth group, we would spend probably more time going over the rules than we would actually spend playing the game. Because I would think I had explained the game perfectly. I'd go through all the rules, blah, 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 blah. You can't do this, you can't do this, you must do this, you can do this. You can't do this, you can go here, you can't go there. You can do this with someone, you can't do this with someone. And I'd go through all the rules, and then as soon as I was done, and inevitably they always ask a question like, well, I hadn't thought of that. So I have to make up a new rule. Because if you don't have everybody on the same page playing a game, if you don't have obvious instructions, then the game doesn't work. And so God, when He put Adam and Eve in this amazing, ideal environment, He gave them loving instructions, loving directions. He said, look, all these trees, all this food, it's there for you. Don't touch this one. All this stuff is good to eat. This one here in the middle, not good to eat. He gave them very clear instructions. So Adam and Eve, they had a beautiful home. They had unlimited food. They had meaningful employment. And they had loving directions. They knew what the rules were. And one more thing, they had an intimate partnership. Look at the end of chapter 2. For Adam, no suitable helper was found. So the Lord God caused man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, He took one of the man's ribs and closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib He had taken out of the man, and He brought her to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. The man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. I tell you what, this is like the perfect capstone of this creation, because not only do they have all these good things going, they have this amazing relationship. When Moses wrote that they were both naked and felt no shame, what he's saying is, look, these two had nothing that they hid from each other. They were perfectly united. There were no secrets. There was nothing between them. They knew each other completely, perfectly. And how often do we long for that? How much do we long for those relationships where someone knows us perfectly? We were created to be known that way. And for Adam and Eve, they knew that. They had that perfect, ideal, intimate partnership. What an amazing creation. It kind of makes you long for it, doesn't it? It kind of makes you say, boy, that'd be nice to get back to that. Well, the good news is at the end of the story we get there. In Revelation 21, it says that God says, now the dwelling of God will be with men. And when God comes back to dwell with men, it's going to be Eden restored and even better. And we can look forward to that, but we don't live there now. But Adam and Eve did. And it kind of, as I get to the end of chapter 2, and I know what's coming in chapter 3, I want to scream at Adam and Eve, focus on what you have. And then I want to say at the end of chapter 3, what were you thinking? Because we go from Genesis 2 and it ends with this perfect relationship, nothing hidden. And we go to Genesis 4 and it starts with brother killing brother. What happened? What happened to get us from this perfect ideal creation over here to where the first brothers are killing each other? And then chapter 4 ends with one of the descendants of the brothers killing more people. 3 murders in chapter 4 of Genesis. What happened? What happened in chapter 3? Well, we know the story, don't we? Snake comes along, talks to the woman. Woman eats the pear, gives it to the man. The man eats the pear. It really wasn't a pear. We don't know what it was. But I think the apple gets a bad rap, so I try to change it whenever I can. And they both eat, and they disobey, and we spiral into this world that we live in today, where people can't get along, where things are broken, disease is everywhere, famine is everywhere, there's all kinds of relational discontinuity. It's terrible. And it's all because Adam and Eve chose to focus on what they didn't have. You see, that was the serpent's strategy. When Satan, in the form of a serpent, came to Adam and Eve, his strategy was to distract them, to get their mind off of what they had and get them focused on what they did not have. Why? Because he knew that the seed of sin is discontent. When we are not willing to be content with what we've been given, it doesn't take long for us to spiral down into sin. And that's what happened with Adam and Eve. They chose to not focus on what they had. And so the serpent comes to Eve, and he's crafty. And I would recommend that to really understand the human condition, read this chapter like 50 times in a row.